Welcome to Echo Forge, dark fantasy and sci-fi stories from the edges of forgotten worlds. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next vision. Now, let's step through the gate. The public side of the door. At midday, the hub looked like a shopping concourse that had learned to pretend it wasn't standing on a wound. Families moved in slow rivers across polished floor tiles, guided by bands of light set into the ground. Green for arrivals, blue for departures, amber for delays. There were kiosks selling warmed pastries and the kind of coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through plastic. There were bright posters in clean sans serif type, all sky gradients and smiling faces. Step through. Stay you. Your life. On time. Gate travel. The safest way home. Above the kiosks, a looped promotional video played on mute. A cargo skiff becoming a cradle of light. A hospital team stepping through with an organ cooler. A couple holding hands and laughing, as if the world had never once failed to catch them on the far side. There was always a faint smell under the coffee and sugar. Ozone, like a lightning storm held behind glass. You could ignore it if you'd grown up with it. You could call it that clean smell if you'd never had to scrub it out of your hair. A mother with a toddler on her hip stood behind the yellow line of Bay C12 and whispered something soft into the child's ear. The kid stared at the platform with solemn, unblinking attention, as if it were a stage and something magical might come out at any moment. The platform itself, flush to the floor, a matte circle of composite and metal set inside a thin ring, did nothing to reward the child's awe. It sat perfectly still. No swirling lights, no shimmering gate, just a disc with 4 corner housings and a small status column at the wall, its indicators steady. Origin. Verified termination, locked. Coherence, stable. A friendly voice floated from the ceiling speakers, warm as the coffee and as impersonal.
Bay C12, departure to Cascade District in 2 minutes. Please ensure loose items are secured. Step within the marked boundary. Thank you for choosing Gate Line.
People didn't look up when it spoke. They didn't need to. The voice was part of the architecture, like air. A courier in a grey jacket rolled a hard-sided case to the edge of the platform and checked his wristband. A teenager with headphones and a bored expression leaned against the railing, 1 foot tapping. An older man with a cane stood stiffly, jaw clenched, as if his body had never quite accepted the idea that walking forward could become arriving somewhere else. The toddler tried to wave at the circle. The mother smiled and made a face back, but her eyes didn't leave the platform, not even when she pretended to laugh. 2 minutes later, the status column chirped, a tone that people didn't hear so much as feel, a quick tightening in the air like a held breath. Coherence. Ramp transfer. Window. Open. The platform brightened, not with light exactly, but with the sense that the air above it had become denser. The space inside the ring looked the same, yet wrong, like a photograph that had been subtly overexposed. Tiny hairs on forearms lifted. Paper wrappers fluttered. The older man's knuckles whitened around his cane. Then the courier stepped forward. He did it with the casual confidence of repetition, 1 foot and then the other, crossing the invisible boundary line as if it were no more meaningful than a stripe of paint. He vanished, not in a burst, not with drama. He was simply not there anymore, as if the hub had decided it had never needed to render him. The air snapped back. The toddler's mouth fell open, delight and confusion warring for control.
Again,
the child squealed. The mother laughed too loudly and adjusted her grip. On the far wall, new text scrolled across a public display. Thank you for traveling with Gateline. Gateline. 99.997% success. Rate this quarter. It was the kind of number designed to soothe, not to inform. The hub flowed on. Bays opened, bays closed. Origins verified, terminations locked. People stepped through and came out elsewhere. Freight disappeared into schedules. Ambulance teams wheeled stretchers onto circles and spoke to their patients as if their voices could anchor them through the transit. The door did what it was built to do. And because it did it so often, because the city and the world had reshaped themselves around the assumption that it would always do it, most of the crowd never considered what the door was cut through. They never considered the maintenance corridors behind the public walls. The service doors marked authorized personnel only, the bays after the crowds left, the platforms when they were off, but still warm in their bones. They never considered the night. The night shift began the way it always did. With the public lights dimmed, the kiosk shuttered, the promotional voice reduced to a sparse set of announcements meant more for compliance than comfort. The hub emptied in slow stages, like a lung exhaling. When the last commuter stepped through and the last freight case vanished, the bays went quiet. Not silent, never silent. The hub had too many systems to ever truly shut up. Fans, pumps, the distant throb of power conditioning. The quiet of a place like this was a narrower band of sound, a lower hum under everything, the kind that crawled into your teeth and made you aware you had bones. Eli Mercer walked alone down the corridor that the public never saw. His boots left damp prints on the grey service floor. The air smelled of disinfectant and old electricity. Overhead lights were harsh and functional, designed to show grime and discourage lingering. Eli had a cart with him, 2 buckets clipped to the sides, a pressurized foam sprayer, spare filters, sealant, a scan wand, a folded squeegee with a worn handle where his glove always rubbed. The cart rattled softly as he pushed it, a familiar sound that made him feel, if not safe, then at least employed. He wore the standard night maintenance uniform, dark coveralls, reflective striping, a patch with his name and employee number, and a radio clipped high on his chest. The radio was quiet right now, the channel open with no traffic, just the faintest hiss of a system listening. He reached Bay C12 from the service side. From the public area, it had looked like a stage. From this angle, it looked like what it was. Machinery, access panels and conduits, a service alcove with a drain grate, a residue collector, a utility sink, warning placards, lockout tags. The status column at the wall had a second display only staff could see. B-A-Y, C12. Status, downcycle origin. Offline termination, standby. Coherence, disabled. The platform sat there like a coin in the floor, matte and patient. Eli hooked his cart into the bay's rail so it wouldn't roll and took his handheld scanner out. He swept it over the platform's rim. The scanner chirped and displayed routine numbers, residue levels, temperature, microfracture stress on the ring. Everything normal. He sprayed foam across the platform in a slow, practiced spiral. The foam went down white and thick, smelling sharp. It hissed as it expanded, filling microscopic scratches, lifting away the grime that the public never saw. Scuff marks, hairline streaks of something metallic, the faintest blackening where the corridor bit the world during a cycle. Eli watched the foam for the first minute, like he always did. Not because protocol demanded it, but because his eyes had learned what wrong looked like. Wrong looked like bubbling that didn't match chemical reaction. Wrong looked like foam that thinned in the center as if something warm were beneath it. Wrong looked like a ring of frost forming where no cold should be. Tonight the foam did what foam did. It sat, then slowly began to collapse, drawing grime up into itself. Eli squeegeed it toward the drain. He wiped the platform with a cloth until it shone with a dull, honest cleanliness. Then, as part of the same ritual he'd repeated so many times he could have done it asleep, he reached up and flicked the bay lights off. It was an old habit from an older tech who taught him when Eli first came on nights.
"You want to see what's really on,"
the tech had said.
"Kill the glare. LEDs show themselves in the dark."
The overhead lights clicked out. For a moment, the bay was lit only by the faint interface glow of the status column and the dim emergency strips near the floor. The platform disappeared into shadow, its edge barely visible. Eli's eyes adjusted. The platform fogged. Not everywhere. Not like humidity settling. A faint bloom of condensation, a soft oval right in the center of the matte disc, as if someone had leaned close and breathed against cold metal. Eli stopped breathing without deciding to. The fog hovered for 2 heartbeats. Then it thinned, almost as if it had never been there, and the disc returned to its matte emptiness. Eli stood very still in the dark. The radio hissed loud in his chest. He told himself it was the disinfectant evaporating. Residual heat from the last cycle. The bay had been busy today. 100 bodies stepping through. Warm shoes. Warm breath. The platform could have held onto temperature the way concrete held onto summer. He flicked the lights back on. The platform looked clean and dry and stupidly innocent. The foam was gone. The metal was metal. Eli swallowed, not because his throat was dry, but because his body had done something without telling him. It had braced. It had chosen a fear response and then had nowhere to put it. He logged the cleaning complete in his handheld and pushed his cart toward the next bay. Behind him, the platform sat perfectly still. The hub hummed. And in Eli's mind, the fog hovered like an afterimage you couldn't blink away. Act 1. The hub as it is, before it becomes what it will be. 1. Shift start. The maintenance locker room was all hard edges and old air. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Benches were bolted to the floor. A wall screen cycled through safety reminders with the relentless cheer of a machine that had never been afraid. Hydrate. Report slips and falls. Follow lockout/tagout procedure. Fatigue is a safety hazard. Eli sat on the bench and tightened his boot laces until the pressure felt like control. His fingers moved without thought, looping and pulling. His hands knew the knot the way his tongue knew the shape of his own teeth. Across from him, Nia Calder swung her legs off the bench and stood, rolling her shoulders. She wore a security tech uniform, which meant her coveralls were the same dark fabric, but with a different patch and a badge clipped higher. Where Eli carried cleaning and tools, Nia carried keys and a stun baton that everyone pretended was for unauthorized personnel. Nia glanced at Eli's face, at the set of his jaw.
"You look like you slept in a trash compactor,"
she said.
"Thanks,"
Eli replied, which meant, "Good evening. I am alive. Don't ask me about my life." Nia smirked and began patting her pockets, checking for her usual inventory. She'd been at the hub almost as long as Eli, long enough to develop the kind of humor you needed to stand watch in an empty place at 3 in the morning.
"You hear the rumor.
she asked. Eli didn't look up.
There are always rumors. This one's fun.
Nia said.
Weekend downtime's getting extended. They're gonna run the shutdown longer than scheduled.
Eli paused with one boot half tied.
Why?
Nia leaned against the lockers, casual.
Because they're optimizing throughput.
Eli snorted.
That means something broke. That means something might break if they don't push the numbers.
Nia corrected.
You know how they get. Monday surge, holiday travelers, freight contracts. God forbid the public has to ride a train like it's ancient history.
Eli finished tying his boot.
Weekend downtime's already long.
Longer.
Nia said, drawing the word out like a threat.
Fewer staff. More bays sitting ready.
Eli didn't like the way she said ready, like a mouth waiting. A beep sounded from the wall console, and the locker room door slid open. Supervisor Harron stepped in with a tablet tucked under one arm. Harron looked like a man who had been compressed by pressure over time. Short cropped hair, eyes always scanning, mouth permanently set, as if he were chewing on a number he didn't like.
Mercer,
Harron said.
Calder.
Nia straightened a fraction. Eli didn't. Harron's gaze flicked to Eli's boots, then to the safety screen as if expecting it to help him.
Shift brief.
Harron said.
We're running hot tonight. Freight backlog from earlier. We're clearing bays through 2 a.m. Then we've got the first of the pre-shutdown checks. I want 0 exceptions on lockout compliance. 0.
Yes, sir.
Nia said, because she knew how to speak to Harron. Eli nodded once. Harron looked at Eli longer than he needed to.
And Mercer, your last report. The one you filed on Bay D3?
Eli's stomach tightened.
The slip hazard? The drain backing up?
Harron's eyes stayed flat.
The wording.
Eli blinked.
The wording was accurate.
Harron sighed like a man with too many fires.
We're going to be careful how we describe anomalies in our system, Mercer.
The word anomalies made Eli's skin prickle. Harron didn't use that word for drains. Eli kept his voice even.
It was just a noise and some condensation. I wrote it down.
Harron tapped his tablet.
You wrote, unexplained environmental response during downtime.
That's what it was.
Harron's jaw worked.
You're not wrong. You're just not helpful. Use approved categories. Humidity fluctuation. Residual thermal bloom. Equipment noise with intolerance.
Nia's eyes flicked to Eli, then away. She was pretending to be uninterested. She wasn't. Eli said carefully.
Why does it matter what I call it if it happened?
Harron's stare sharpened.
Because words travel, Mercer. Words make people nervous. Nervous people hesitate. Hesitation is injuries. Injuries are lawsuits. Lawsuits are delays. Delays are...
Bad metrics.
Nia supplied too lightly. Harron ignored her.
It's not complicated. The system is safe. Our job is to keep it safe. Do your job. Write your reports like you were trained.
Eli felt something bitter rise in him, but he swallowed it back down. Harron wasn't the enemy. Harron was the mouthpiece of something bigger that didn't have a face and didn't care if Eli believed in it.
Yes, sir.
Eli said. Harron nodded once, satisfied he'd applied pressure.
Good. Now move. Bay Cluster C is going to need you after the last freight run. If you see anything at all, log it correctly.
He turned and left. The locker room door slid shut behind him with a soft, airtight sound. Nia let out a breath she'd been holding.
Approved categories.
She muttered.
God. Like reality gives a shit about approved categories.
Eli stood and grabbed his gloves.
Just do your job,
he said, but he didn't mean it the way Harron did. Nia watched him for a moment, then said, quieter.
Did you see something again?
Eli paused with his radio halfway clipped. He could have lied. He could have shrugged. He could have done what everyone did, file it away under nothing. Instead, he said,
Maybe.
Nia's expression shifted into something attentive.
Where?
Eli hesitated. Then, because he couldn't get the image of the fog out of his head, he said,
C12.
Nia's eyebrows rose.
Public bay.
Yeah.
Nia looked toward the locker room door, then back at Eli.
That's not great.
Eli clipped his radio on.
It's probably humidity.
Nia's mouth twitched.
Sure.
She said, which meant, if that helps you sleep. They left together. 2. When the system is on. The public concourse was mostly dark now, the kiosks locked and the pastry cases empty. Only a handful of late travelers drifted through, their footsteps loud in the emptier space. The bays glowed like small stages in a theatre after the show, each platform outlined by safety light. Beyond the public area, the hub's operational core was awake. Eli pushed his cart down the service corridor that ran behind Bay Cluster C. Pipes and conduit lines followed the ceiling like veins. The air got warmer near the power conditioners, and the hum deepened, settling into Eli's ribs. Nia peeled off toward a security door, her keys chiming softly.
I'm doing a perimeter sweep,
She called.
Try not to get eaten by a mop bucket.
Same to you.
Eli replied. He didn't like that she'd used the word eaten. He didn't like how easily it fit. Bay C9 was active, freight cycling out. Eli could hear it even from the service side. The shift in the air, the subtle tightening of pressure when a window opened. 2 logistics workers in high-vis vests guided a pallet onto the platform. The pallet was wrapped in smart mesh and tagged with a blinking destination marker. One of the workers pointed at the status column. Origin, Pier 4. Warehouse, Termination. C-9, Auth. Confirmed window, 00:00:45. The origin was already paired, already calling. The termination pad was locked, engaged, ready to receive what the origin told it to receive. Eli had heard engineers describe it in clean terms. A handshake, a corridor, a transient coherence channel, like a tunnel bored through something that wasn't quite space. On nights when Eli was tired and the hum sank too deep into his skull, he sometimes thought of it differently, a throat being held open. The pallet vanished on the count of a tone. The air snapped. The status column updated. Transfer complete residue. Nominal. A second later, the origin bay's readout, visible on a mirrored screen, confirmed delivery on the far end. The system liked confirmation. The system liked clear beginnings and clear endings. The system liked knowing where a thing had come from and where it had gone. Eli watched the platform for another second, the way you watched a dog after it stopped barking, just to be sure it was done. Nothing happened. He moved on. In Bay C10, a late commuter stepped onto the platform. The status column's public display flashed a polite countdown. The commuter shifted weight, nervous. The hub voice cooed reassurance.
Please remain still during transfer. Thank you.
The commuter vanished. A heartbeat later, in Bay C11, a different traveler arrived, stepping out as if from a doorway. She blinked against the light, adjusted her bag strap, walked away without looking back. Most people didn't look back. Eli did, because his job was what remained after the people left. He watched the platform's rim for any discoloration, any irregular condensation, any faint black grit at the seam. He watched the status column's staff display. Origin, confirmed termination, locked, coherence, stable. When the system was on, it was clean, in a way that made you trust it. Even the hum felt purposeful. Even the air pressure felt controlled. When the system was off, it felt different. Eli thought of the fog and tried not to. 3. Cleaning the aftermath. By 1 a.m., the last freight run ended. Bay Cluster C went into scheduled downcycle, one bay at a time. The public side lights dimmed further. The hub voice stopped trying to sound friendly and became purely informational.
Cluster C entering maintenance interval. Please proceed to alternate bays.
Eli wheeled his cart into Bay C12 again, because the bay assignments weren't personal. They were just numbers. From the service side, the platform looked the same as it had earlier. Matte disc, ring seam, 4 housings, status column. The staff display read BAYC 12, status, downcycle origin, offline termination, standby, coherence, disabled. Eli took his scan wand and ran it around the ring. Nominal. He sprayed foam. He made himself not think about turning the lights off. He cleaned the platform, squeegeed, wiped, checked the drain grate for blockages. He pulled the residue filter and replaced it with a fresh cartridge. He checked the access panel screws to make sure none were loose. A small part of him wanted to find something wrong. A loose cable, a faulty humidity sensor, a reason. He found nothing. When he finished, he stood with the cloth in his hand and stared at the platform longer than he needed to. The hub hummed. The service corridor behind him was empty, quiet enough that he could hear his own breath in his respirator. His radio hissed. Eli touched the radio as if it might be hot.
Mercer.
He said softly, not because anyone had called him, but because it was sometimes comforting to put your own name into a system that listened. No reply, just hiss. He forced himself to move, pushed the cart toward Bay C13. By the time he finished Bay C14, the hub's operational hum had shifted again. The system was cycling down more bays, moving toward the pre-shutdown checks. The sound of it was like a giant settling into sleep, a deepening throb as loads redistributed. Eli began to relax, fraction by fraction, the way you relaxed in a storm cellar when the wind eased. He told himself that what he'd seen earlier was nothing, a trick of evaporation, a tired brain giving meaning to humidity. He told himself that because if he didn't, he would have to consider that something could happen when the system was off, something that wasn't a mechanical failure. He wasn't paid enough to consider that. He wasn't protected enough to consider that. Still, as he walked, he found himself glancing at the staff displays as if they were faces. Origin, offline termination, standby. He didn't like how often standby appeared. Standby sounded like waiting. 4. Old stories, old numbers. At 2 a.m., per schedule, the maintenance crews took a 15-minute break before the pre-shutdown checklist began. In practice, this meant Eli sat on a plastic chair in the break room with a protein bar that tasted like wet cardboard, and Nia leaned against a vending machine with her arms crossed, watching the hallway like she expected it to bite her. The break room had one window, but it didn't look outside. It looked into an equipment bay filled with conduit and power housings. The window was there for safety regulation, a token of openness. The view was a reminder. Everything here was machine. On the wall above the microwave, someone had mounted a plaque. It was old enough that the edges had yellowed. Gateline Hub. Year 1, 10 million. Transfers. 0 incidents. Thank you for building the future. Someone had scribbled in pen beneath it, small and bitter, if you don't count the ones they didn't log. Eli stared at the plaque longer than he needed to. Nia followed his gaze.
They should take that down,
She said.
They won't.
Eli replied. Nia shrugged.
Makes them look good, like we're part of a miracle.
Eli chewed his protein bar and tried not to taste it. It worked, he said, half to himself.
In the beginning,
Nia's eyebrows rose.
You sound like my grandmother.
Eli swallowed.
no, I mean, it really did. People used to be terrified. I remember, my dad wouldn't write it for the first year. And then,
He gestured vaguely, as if encompassing the entire world outside this windowless room.
now it's a commute.
Nia pushed off the vending machine.
Things don't stay miracles.
She said.
They become utilities. Utilities get used. Used things wear down.
Eli looked at her sharply, because the way she'd said wear down made his stomach tense again. Nia noticed.
What?
She asked too quick.
Don't tell me you've never thought about it.
Eli didn't answer. Nia lowered her voice, leaning in a fraction.
Okay, here's the thing I heard from Renner.
Eli's eyes narrowed.
Renner's been retired 5 years.
Yeah, and he still comes in for free coffee and to scare new hires.
Nia's mouth twitched.
He said the early teams used to run settling routines after peak hours, not just cleaning, field stuff, extra cycles with no cargo, like smoothing the edges.
Eli's pulse quickened.
That's not in any manual.
Nia rolled her eyes.
Because it slowed throughput, they cut it. Of course they cut it.
Eli stared at the plaque again, the neat numbers, the clean certainty.
Renner said
Nia continued.
that when they first built the hub, the bays felt tight, in a good way, like everything was braced, and now,
She made a vague motion with her hands, fingers spreading.
now he said it feels looser, like the air is thinner around the pads.
Eli felt cold creep up his arms, even in the warm break room. Before he could respond, the break room door slid open. Harren stepped in again, tablet in hand, as if he lived in the walls. He looked at Nia, at Eli, at the plaque, and his mouth tightened.
Calder.
He said.
Mercer. Break's over.
Nia straightened immediately, expression neutral. Eli stood more slowly. Harren's gaze flicked to Nia.
And I don't want to hear Renner's name on my floor. He's not staff. He's a liability.
Nia's face went blank.
Yes, sir.
Harren's eyes shifted to Eli.
You're on Bay C12 again for pre-shutdown.
Eli's throat tightened.
Why?
Because that's the bay on your route.
Harren snapped, then softened his tone a fraction, as if remembering he was supposed to be a leader, not a hammer.
Because it's public-facing, and we need it pristine. Weekend downtime inspections are coming. Metrics will be audited. I want everything clean, tight, and boring.
Clean, tight, boring. Eli nodded. Harren stepped aside so they could file out, his presence a physical thing in the doorway, compressing them as they passed. As Eli walked by, Harren said low enough that only Eli could hear.
And Mercer, no more creative wording.
Eli didn't look at him,
Yes, sir.
but as he walked back into the corridor, the hub's hum felt a little less like a machine settling and a little more like something held down. 5. The first thing he can't dismiss. Bay C12 again. Eli pushed his cart into position and checked the staff display. BAYC12. Status, pre-shutdown, check origin, offline termination, standby, coherence, disabled. He scanned the ring seam. Nominal. He checked the drain. Clear. He sprayed foam, because foam was what you did when you didn't want to think. He scrubbed in slow circles. the cloth rasping softly on matte composite. The smell of disinfectant stung his nose. The lights above were bright enough to make every streak visible. Eli cleaned until the platform looked new. Then he stood there, cloth in hand, and did not turn the lights off. He stared at the platform, daring it to do something under full illumination, daring reality to misbehave in a way he could explain to someone else. Nothing happened. Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His muscles loosened an inch. He turned toward his cart to log the bay as complete. As he did, his peripheral vision caught something on the platform. A faint sheen. Not water exactly, not a spill. Just the slightest change in surface texture right in the center of the disc. Like the matte finish had become glass for a moment. Eli turned back. The sheen was gone. He stood very still. He watched the platform without blinking until his eyes watered. Nothing. Eli shook his head, annoyed with himself. Tired. That's what Harren would say. Fatigue is a safety hazard. Don't work nights if you can't handle shadows. Eli turned again to log the bay. The platform fogged. Not the quick bloom from earlier in the dark. This time, it was under bright lights, faint but unmistakable. A thin oval of condensation that formed in the center, as if something warm had pressed close to cold metal. Eli's heart slammed against his ribs. The fog held for a second, and Eli felt something else. Not an image, not a face, but the sense of pressure from the wrong side of a surface, like someone leaning against a closed window. Then the condensation thinned, evaporating into nothing. Eli stepped forward without meaning to, as if proximity could make it make sense. He touched the platform with 2 gloved fingers. Cold, dry, matte. His radio hissed sharply, a little spike of static that made him flinch. Eli looked up at the status column as if it might confess. Origin. Offline termination. Standby. He swallowed. He forced himself to do what Harren had trained into them. Document. Log. Categorize. Make the strange into data. Eli went to his handheld and opened the incident template. His fingers hovered over the approved categories. Humidity fluctuation, residual thermal bloom, equipment noise within tolerance. His skin crawled as he typed. He started with the truth anyway, because the truth mattered to him, even if it didn't matter to the people who signed his paychecks. Observed condensation formation on platform surface during bay down cycle. No active transfer. No logged origin. Condensation appeared in centered oval and dissipated within approximately 1 second. No detectable moisture afterward. He hesitated, then added, event occurred twice in same bay within a single shift. Repeatable. That was the word he wanted. Repeatable meant pattern. Pattern meant real. Eli hit submit. The handheld chirped, confirming upload. A moment later, his radio clicked.
Harren.
The supervisor said.
Mercer.
Eli's throat tightened. Yeah,
I saw your note.
Harren said.
It happened.
Eli replied, keeping his voice flat.
I'm not disputing that you saw condensation.
Harren said. And Eli could hear the emphasis. Saw.
But your wording?
It's accurate.
Harren exhaled hard.
Mercer, listen. We don't write no logged origin in a report that might get pulled for audit. You understand me?
Eli's mouth went dry. Why?
Because that implies system inconsistency.
Harren said, and his voice was sharper now, warning.
Because that implies vulnerability. Because it will get kicked up the chain and land on my desk. and then your desk, and then someone who has never scrubbed a platform in their life will decide we're creating risk perception.
Eli's grip tightened on his radio.
So what am I supposed to write?
Harren's tone softened again, the way a manager's voice softened when they were about to tell you how the world worked.
You're supposed to write what we can act on.
Harren said.
Humidity, residual heat, environmental response. Nothing that suggests.
He paused as if choosing a word he didn't want to say out loud.
Anything else?
Eli stared at the platform. It sat there clean and dry, the perfect picture of normal. He heard himself ask very quietly,
Has this been happening a lot?
Harren didn't answer immediately. When he did, he said,
Just do your job, Mercer.
The line went dead. Eli stood alone in Bay C12 with his cart and his buckets and the smell of disinfectant and the hum of a facility that never truly shut up. He looked back down at his handheld. The incident report was still there, but the system had already processed it, reformatted it into the approved template language, smoothing his sharp edges into something safe. His sentence had been changed. Observed minor condensation consistent with humidity variance. No further action required. Within tolerance. Eli stared at the words until his eyes ached. Then, because he had no choice, he locked the bay panel, tagged the checklist, and pushed his cart toward the next assignment. Behind him, Bay C12 remained in standby. Origin offline, termination listening, and Eli couldn't shake the feeling that if he turned the lights off again, the platform would breathe. Act 1 ended not with a scream or a shadow, but with something worse. A pattern and a system designed to sand it down until nobody could hold it in their hands and call it what it was. Something was happening when the door was off, and somebody already knew. Actus secundus, the pattern, and the people who sand it down. The next night the hub looked the same. That was the first cruelty of it. The world could be wearing thin at the seams, and the floor could still shine, the banners could still promise safety, the ceiling voice could still sound warm. Eli clocked in under buzzing fluorescence and the familiar stale smell of disinfectant, and he found a new sheet pinned to the corkboard beside the break room door. Approved language. Environmental irregularities. A list of soft words, all rounded edges. Humidity variance residual thermal bloom equipment noise within tolerant sensor artifact surface condensation event, non-transfer. Operator fatigue indicator. At the bottom, one line in smaller print that felt heavier than the rest. Do not include origin/termination speculation in reporting. Eli stared at it long enough for the paper to blur. Nia came up beside him, read it once, and snorted like she'd tasted something bitter.
They printed a vocabulary,
She muttered.
for things we're not supposed to say.
Eli didn't answer. His jaw hurt with how hard he'd been holding it. Harren's office door was open. Harren sat inside with his tablet, shoulders hunched, looking like a man bracing against a tide he couldn't stop. Eli pushed his cart out into the corridor anyway, because the schedule didn't change for dread. 6. Another witness. Cluster C was running late freight. The public side was dim, but the operational core was awake. Fans pulling air, power conditioners humming, bays cycling like a heartbeat. Eli went where he was assigned. The bays that looked like stages from the concourse and like machinery from the service side. Nia fell into step with him at the junction, keys chiming softly.
You're on C again?
She asked.
Pre-checks.
Eli said.
Weekend downtime's getting extended.
Nia said. And the way she said it made it feel like a threat, not a schedule update.
Longer quiet, fewer bodies, more bays sitting ready.
Ready. Eli hated that word too now. They reached one of the downcycled bays. The staff readout by the wall glowed its usual calm green, but the details were what made Eli's throat tighten. Origin dark, termination not fully asleep, kept warm, kept receptive, like a hand held out in the dark waiting for someone to take it. Eli moved through his routine because routine was armor. Scan the seam, check the drain, foam the platform, scrub in slow circles, squeegee toward the grate, replace a filter cartridge, tighten panel screws. Normal, normal, normal. Nia watched without joking. Eli reached for his handheld to log completion. His radio hissed. Not the usual low background static. This was sharper, like the channel had been pinched. Nia's head tilted immediately. She'd heard it too. The hiss shaped itself into something wet and intimate. A breath too close to the microphone. Eli went cold. Nia's eyes widened just a fraction, the way a person's eyes widen before they decide whether to laugh something off. The breath faded back into hiss. Neither of them moved for a heartbeat. Then Nia spoke, voice low.
Do the thing you do,
she said. Eli's fingers tightened on the handheld.
What thing?
The lights,
she said.
You said you kill them sometimes to check the bay.
Eli didn't want to. Not with someone watching. Not with someone else there to prove it wasn't in his head. Proof made things real, and real things demanded action. But Nia's gaze held steady. Eli reached for the switch and clicked the overheads off. The bay dropped into emergency strips and the muted glow of the wall panel. The platform became a dark coin set into darker floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Eli felt his lungs loosen. Then the center of the platform bloomed with faint condensation, an oval, soft-edged like breath on cold metal. Nia made a sound that wasn't quite a gasp and wasn't quite a curse. The fog held for 2 heartbeats, long enough for Eli to feel, viscerally, the sense of something leaning from the wrong side of a surface. Then it thinned and disappeared. Eli snapped the lights back on. The platform sat clean and dry, matte as if it had never changed. Nia stared at it like it had lied to her personally.
Okay,
she said, and her voice had gone thin.
Okay, that's not humidity.
Eli tried to make his mouth work.
It's a condensation event,
he said, bitterly quoting the memo. Nia looked at the wall readout again. Origin dark, termination still awake.
It's not the thing that's listening,
she said, and the word came out raw anyway.
It's the bay. The receiver's still live.
Eli felt his stomach drop because that was worse. A living receiver meant a pathway. A pathway meant response. A pathway meant you weren't alone even when the building looked empty. Nia swallowed.
We tell Heron,
she said. Eli almost laughed.
And we say what? The bay breathed?
Nia's jaw clenched.
We say the receiver state persists through downtime,
she said.
We say the comm channel picked up a proximity artifact. We say it's repeatable.
Repeatable. Eli hated that word too now, because it turned a scare into a pattern. 7. The new rules. By midweek, there were more memos. A data handling update that auto-archived maintenance bay video after 24 hours. A privacy directive that forbade personal recording devices anywhere near operational zones. A new checkbox on the nightly checklist. Confirm comms clear of artifact. Eli checked it without smiling. The hub didn't feel safer with the paperwork. It felt more carefully managed. Nia stopped making jokes. Heron stopped meeting Eli's eyes. and the ceiling voice kept thanking travelers like the building hadn't learned how to inhale in the dark. Eli began to notice something else too. Not every bay behaved the same. Some termination points felt softer, not mechanically, not in a way the scanners could quantify. In a way, his skin noticed. The air sat wrong near them, as if it didn't want to move. Corners looked deeper than they should. The hum under everything had places where it thickened, as if sound itself got stuck. Always the oldest bays. Always the ones that ran hot. Always the ones that never truly rested. Used things wore grooves into the world. 8. Compliance arrives with a smile. On Friday, a woman Eli had never seen before walked through the service corridor with a badge that unlocked doors before she reached them. Voss. She wore clean clothes in a dirty place and smiled like she was doing everyone a kindness by being present. 2 men followed with hard cases, and Harren met them with the posture of a man being squeezed. Eli tried to pass without being seen. His radio clicked.
Mercer, report to D-cluster.
Eli's stomach clenched. Nia appeared at the corridor corner like she'd been summoned by dread. She didn't speak. She just watched Eli with the kind of look that meant, "Don't go in there alone." Eli pushed his cart into the oldest section of the building. The air was warmer here. The hum was deeper. The floor tiles bore the faint hairline repairs of a place that had been patched too many times. Voss was waiting outside one of the bays, like she'd chosen it, like she'd known where the world was thinnest.
Mr. Mercer?
She said, reading his name patch as if it were an appointment.
Night maintenance. Yes,
Eli said.
We're running a controlled receiver diagnostic.
Voss said.
Routine assurance.
Routine. That word again, stretched thin enough to tear. Her tech opened a case and brought out a sleek instrument. He tapped a screen. A low tone filled the bay, subtle but physical, like pressure in the teeth. The wall readout changed, not with a dramatic alarm, but with the same calm as always, just a line shifting from idle to active. Eli felt his skin prickle immediately. The platform sat still. The air did not. The room became attentive. Then the platform fogged, faint, centered, patient, as if the bay itself had exhaled. Voss's smile widened by the smallest fraction.
Thank you,
she said softly, as if Eli had performed on cue.
That confirms our trend data.
Eli stared at her.
So you knew.
Voss didn't deny it.
We monitor phenomena,
she said.
We maintain continuity. What is it?
Eli demanded, and his voice cracked on the last word, because he was tired of being handed softer language for hard things. Voss's eyes stayed bright and calm.
A side effect,
she said.
High-volume operation leaves stress in the system.
Eli's hands clenched.
Stress in the system,
he repeated, tasting the lie. Voss stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was offering comfort.
You work nights,
she said.
Quiet makes people hear patterns. Quiet makes people afraid. We can't afford fear.
Eli's throat tightened.
A contractor vanished,
he said. Voss's smile did not change.
Contractor status is an administrative matter,
she replied, as if a person could be filed away like a scheduling conflict. Nia's silhouette was visible at the bay entrance, rigid and furious. Eli felt something sour rise in him.
This is getting worse,
he said. Voss nodded, as if he'd said the sky was blue.
That is why we are implementing an upgrade,
she said. Soon. Then she turned and walked away, her shoes still silent, leaving Eli with a bay that had breathed on command. 9. Renner's warning. Renner came in the next night, like a ghost that still had clearance through habit. He looked older than his ID photo. Face creased like paper that had been folded too many times. He poured himself coffee that tasted like dirt and stared at the old plaque on the wall. Year 1, 0 incidents. Renner made a quiet sound of disgust.
If you don't count the ones they didn't log,
He muttered. Eli approached carefully.
They cut your settling routines.
Eli said. Renner's eyes snapped to him.
who told you that?
Eli didn't answer. Renner lowered his voice.
We didn't trust it at first.
He said.
We treated termination points like they were injuries, because that's what they are, controlled injuries. You punch enough holes in anything, it starts to fray.
Eli's mouth went dry.
So it's the hubs.
He whispered.
Not.
Renner's gaze held Eli's.
I'm not saying it's haunted.
He said.
I'm saying you keep opening a door into a place that isn't yours, and you're doing it so often the doorway doesn't fully shut anymore.
Eli felt cold crawl up his arms.
Can it take people?
Renner didn't answer immediately. Then he said quietly,
If the receiver stays live long enough, if the seam is thin enough, if the quiet gives it room, yeah.
Eli swallowed.
How did you stop it?
Renner's mouth tightened.
We didn't stop anything.
He said.
We held it. We kept terminations from sitting open-ended. We kept clamps warm. We didn't let the bay become a listening ear with no collar to bracket it.
Eli's radio hissed softly in his chest, like punctuation. Renner leaned in.
If you hear breath on comms,
He said, voice low and fierce.
don't answer.
The break room door slid open. Harren walked in, saw Renner, and his face tightened like he'd bitten down on a nail.
Renner,
Harren said flatly.
out.
Renner didn't argue. He only looked at Eli one last time.
Be careful.
He said, and left. Harren turned to Eli.
Stop digging.
He hissed.
Stop talking. Stop writing anything that makes the wrong people nervous.
Eli met his gaze.
A man is missing.
Eli said. Harren's expression flickered, just a hairline crack, then reset.
Back to work.
He said. 10. The first loss in Eli's time. The night before the extended shutdown, the hub ran hot. Everyone tried to cram the weekend into the hours before quiet, like the building itself was holding its breath for what came when Origins went dark. Eli got assigned to a freight termination bay deep in D cluster, the kind of bay that never saw tourists or smiling posters. Only pallets, hard cases, and workers with tired hands. A contractor named Jory was already inside, kneeling by an access panel with his toolkit spread out.
They told me to check casing seals.
Jory said, cheerful enough to be ignorant.
Make sure nothing gets in.
Eli's stomach tightened at the phrase gets in.
Don't stay long.
Eli said. Jory frowned.
Why?
Eli forced a neutral tone.
Bays get cold.
He lied. Jory shrugged and went back to his panel. Eli foamed the platform and scrubbed, because ritual mattered, because routine was the last thing that still made sense. His radio hissed sharply. Jory looked up.
That you?
Eli shook his head. The hiss thickened into breath, close, wet, intimate. The bay lights dimmed as if someone had leaned on the building's brightness. Eli's ears popped. A pressure wave rolled through the room. Jory stood up fast, tool clattering.
What the hell?
The platform fogged, wide and sudden, like a lung exhaling hard. The air felt heavy, like deep water. Jory backed toward the exit, eyes locked on the platform.
Nope.
He whispered. Then his heel crossed the painted boundary line.
Jory, don't.
Eli lunged. Too late. The fog surged upward, and for a fraction of a second Eli felt, not saw, the sense of something taking hold, not with hands, but with intention. Jory made a sound that didn't carry, like the air had been stolen out of his throat. His outline blurred, not like a clean transfer, but like a motion that didn't finish. Then he wasn't there. Just empty air and the clatter of tools. The light snapped back to normal brightness. The platform's fog thinned. Eli stood frozen, heart slamming, watching foam collapse on a disc that looked perfectly ordinary. His radio crackled. Nia's voice, sharp and panicked.
Eli, where are you?
Eli's mouth worked.
Decluster,
He rasped.
get here.
Nia arrived hard and fast, baton in hand. One look at Eli's face, one look at the empty toolkit, and her expression changed.
Where is he?
She demanded. Eli swallowed. Gone, he whispered.
He crossed the line and...
Nia's radio cut out mid-breath. A calmer voice replaced it, too smooth to belong in panic.
Security, stand down.
Nia went rigid. Eli's blood went cold. Voss. Nia's jaw clenched.
A man just vanished.
She hissed.
We need emergency protocol.
We need correct reporting.
Voss replied, as if she was talking about a spill.
Lock the bay. Exit. Do not discuss this outside official channels.
Nia's eyes went glassy with rage.
You're going to bury him.
There was a pause. Then Voss said, softly,
We are maintaining continuity.
Eli grabbed Nia's sleeve.
Not here.
He whispered, and Nia swallowed her fury like a bitter pill. They backed out. Eli slammed the hard lockout. The bay door sealed with an airtight thud. Outside, in the corridor, Eli pressed his forehead to the wall and tried not to vomit. Nia stood beside him, shaking.
They're going to write him into nothing.
She whispered. Eli swallowed hard.
They already did.
He said. 11. Weekend downtime arrives. After Jory, everything was different, and still the hub kept running. Jory's name disappeared from the roster by morning. Forms rejected Nia's reports as if he had never existed. Harren didn't say his name once. The extended shutdown approached like weather you couldn't stop, just prepare for, badly. On Saturday night, Eli and Nia stood outside Bay C-12, the first bay that had ever breathed, and watched the wall readout glow its calm green assurances, while the building around it emptied.
Long quiet,
Nia said, voice flat. Eli stared at the platform.
It presses harder when there's no origin.
He whispered. Nia didn't ask what he meant. She already knew.
We don't go alone,
she said. Eli nodded once.
Together.
The concourse screens displayed a cheerful message in huge letters. Weekend maintenance improves your experience. Thank you for your patience. Eli felt sick. Actus tertius. The long shutdown. The first hours were almost peaceful. Bays went dark, cluster by cluster. The public concourse became a hollow mall. The ceiling voice stopped speaking. Only the hum remained, the building's low, constant breath. Eli and Nia moved through the service corridors with tools and checklists, doing what they were supposed to do: drain checks, seam scans, filter swaps, lockout confirmations. But the quiet had weight now, and in older bays, the air behaved like it was waiting. Sometimes a platform would fog faintly when no one touched it. Sometimes the corner shadows would deepen, as if the room was trying to hold something. Eli stopped turning lights off as a routine check. He didn't need the proof anymore. The proof was everywhere. 12. The press. Deep in D cluster, in one of the oldest bays, Eli laid foam across the platform out of habit. The foam dimpled slowly, just one depression near the center, as if something beneath the metal had leaned up into it. Not a handprint, not a shape you could name, just pressure. Eli's breath stopped. Nia whispered,
It's right there.
Eli nodded, throat too tight for words. The depression eased back, foam rising as if released. His radio hissed softly, like a thing clearing its throat. Nia's hand touched Eli's sleeve, not gripping, just anchoring. They finished the checklist with shaking hands and moved on. Stopping wasn't an option. The building didn't care if you were afraid. 13. The sound becomes almost words. By 2 a.m, the hum under everything felt clearer. There was a second rhythm braided through it. Slow, patient, like a pulse that didn't match fans or pumps. Eli noticed it first in his teeth. Nia noticed it when she rubbed her temples and muttered.
Do you feel that?
They entered another bay, and Eli stepped near the platform to check the seam. His skin prickled. His eyes watered abruptly, as if the air had sharpened. His radio hissed. Then inside the hiss, a shape of sound that wasn't a full word, just the beginning of one.
L.
Eli froze. Nia went pale.
It's...
She started. Eli shook his head sharply. No answering. No responding. No giving it a shape with their mouths. He backed out of the boundary line slowly. The hiss softened back into ordinary static. Nia swallowed, voice shaking with fury and fear.
It knows your name because we've said it 100 times into open channels,
she whispered. Eli's throat tightened.
It's learned the building,
he said.
It's learned us.
14. Compliance makes the choice for them. At 3:17 a.m, the lights flickered. Just once, but it was enough to make Eli's stomach drop. Harren's voice came through comms, strained.
Status check. We're seeing a power conditioning anomaly. Remain in assigned zones. Do not initiate manual overrides unless instructed.
Eli's hands clenched. Power anomalies during shutdown were rare. Power anomalies during shutdown were dangerous. Then Voss cut into the channel like she owned it.
We're initiating early receiver readiness tests,
she said calmly.
Terminations must be stabilized before Monday ramp.
Nia's voice was tight with rage.
With Origins dark? Are you insane?
We are ensuring continuity,
Voss replied. Eli stared at the nearest wall panel. Across the corridor, other panels blinked, clusters shifting into diagnostic readiness. A building-wide tone threaded into the air, low and physical, like pressure in bone.
They're turning on the receive lattice,
Eli whispered. Nia's eyes burned.
They're opening ears,
she hissed. Eli keyed his mic.
No,
he said. Silence. Then Harren, ragged.
Mercer, don't do anything stupid.
Eli's voice shook.
A man vanished in my bay,
he said.
I'm not helping you make a second one.
Voss's voice sharpened.
Refusal will result in removal of your operational access.
Eli laughed once, bitter.
And you'll put someone else in there who hasn't learned to be afraid,
he said. Voss didn't answer right away. That pause told Eli everything. 15. The hub leans back. They reach the corridor outside the oldest bays as the building-wide diagnostic tone deepened. Behind bay glass, platforms fogged one by one. Soft blooms, ovals, and wide smears like breath trapped under a lid. It wasn't one haunted platform. It was the network responding like a body full of open mouths. The corridor lights dimmed as if brightness had become negotiable. Eli's ears popped hard, Pain bloomed behind his eyes. Nia pressed her fingers to her temple and swore softly. The pressure felt like drowning at high altitude. Somewhere down the hall, a viewing panel cracked, not from impact, but from stress, spider-webbing outward like ice under weight. Nia's voice shook.
It's pushing from the wrong side.
Eli's radio hiss turned wet and furious. The static thickened, layered, almost whispering. A compulsion hit Eli so clean it terrified him, an urge to reach for the lockouts and undo them. Not thought, gravity. Nia grabbed his wrist hard.
Stay with me,
she snarled. Eli clenched his fist until his knuckles ached. Pain anchored him. He tasted blood where he'd bitten his tongue.
We cut our cluster,
Nia said, eyes wild.
We stopped the listening.
Eli hesitated. One flash of Monday surge, of memos, of threats. Then he pictured Jory's tools on the floor like a fossil of interrupted life. Eli nodded once.
Do it.
Nia sprinted to the emergency cutoff panel and slammed her palm down. Relays clunked. Lights sagged across their section. Emergency strips flared. The building-wide tone wavered, stuttered, and dropped in pitch. For a moment, Eli felt relief like air returning. Then the pressure surged again, harder, as if whatever pressed from the other side had recognized resistance. A bay glass panel bowed inward slightly. Eli's stomach flipped. The fog behind that glass surged upward, and for a fraction of a second Eli saw, not a body, not a shape, just a bruised, dark thickening in the mist, like a stain blooming in air. Nia raised her baton uselessly and took a step back. Eli slammed the hard lockout for that bay. Seals engaged with an airtight thunk. Red indicators lit. The glass stopped flexing. The bruised dark thickening shifted, curious, testing. Eli's radio hiss softened into something coaxing.
Li.
It breathed. Almost right. Eli's hand twitched toward the release again, compulsion surging like tide. Nia stepped close and grabbed his shoulders.
Don't drift,
she snapped.
Don't you dare drift.
Eli forced his gaze to her eyes, to the hard human fact of her. The hiss churned, unhappy. Then, abruptly, the building-wide diagnostic tone cut out, like someone had severed it. For a heartbeat, the corridor was silent except for emergency hum. The fog behind the glass hung in place, as if holding its breath. Eli's skull pressure peaked, then eased. Slowly, the fog began to thin. The bruised dark thickening withdrew like a stain washed by water. The cracked glass remained cracked, but the flexing stopped. Eli's radio hiss softened back into ordinary static. Nia sagged, breath shaking.
It backed off,
she whispered. Eli swallowed hard.
It didn't lose,
he rasped.
It just stopped pushing.
Nia's eyes were wet with exhaustion and fury.
Because it learned,
she whispered.
It learned what the building is.
Eli looked down the corridor. Behind a sealed security door's glass panel, Voss stood with her tablet, watching, calm as a scientist, as if this had been a test she'd planned. Eli's blood ran cold. Voss met his eyes through the glass. Then she smiled, small, controlled, and walked away. Nia's voice broke.
She watched,
she whispered.
She just watched.
Eli clenched his fists.
She wanted to know how far it could go,
he said. Nia swallowed.
Or how far we'd go to stop it,
she said. Either way, the answer was now written into the building. 16. Aftermath. Rewritten. They didn't let Eli and Nia leave their section until dawn. When the doors finally unsealed, Harren was waiting with a face like grey paper. He took one look at the cracked viewing panel and swore under his breath.
What did you do?
He demanded, voice ragged. Nia stepped forward.
We stopped it.
She snapped.
We cut the receivers when compliance ran diagnostics during shutdown.
Harren flinched at the word compliance like it burned. Eli stared at him.
You knew they'd do it.
Eli said quietly. Harren's jaw worked.
I was ordered.
He said, and the bitterness in his voice sounded real.
You think I wanted...
Nia cut him off, voice shaking.
Say his name.
She demanded.
Say Jory.
Harren's eyes flicked away. That was all the answer she needed. Harren lowered his voice.
There will be an official report,
he said.
You stick to it. Power conditioning anomaly, temporary receiver instability, emergency procedures engaged, no injuries.
Nia stared at him like he'd slapped her.
No injuries,
she whispered. Harren's voice cracked.
No injuries,
he repeated, and it sounded like self-defense. Eli felt something hollow open in his chest. Down the corridor, Voss stood again, tablet in hand, observing like the night hadn't taken anything from anyone. Voss approached, smiling gently.
Unfortunate,
she said, glancing at the cracked panel.
But instructive.
Eli's voice came out raw.
Instructive,
he echoed.
We are implementing upgrades across termination bays,
Voss said.
Effective immediately.
Nia's eyes narrowed.
Why now?
Voss's smile didn't flicker.
Because we have sufficient data,
she said. Eli went cold.
Data,
he whispered. Voss nodded.
And because we are committed to safety.
Nia's mouth twisted.
What about the missing man?
Voss blinked like she was searching a file.
Administrative status is being processed,
she said. Nia made a broken sound in her throat. Voss turned away, and the hub's morning lights came up on the concourse like everything was fine. Because the public needed fine. Because fine was the product. Epilogue. Back to work. After what happened, they installed stabilizers on every termination bay. That was the only acknowledgement. No memorial, no announcement, no apology. Just daylight crews bolting new hardware into place behind closed concourse doors, while the posters were quietly swapped and the ceiling voice was tuned a shade brighter. By Monday morning, the public walked in again and stepped onto platforms with the same casual faith as always. Service restored, enhanced safety measures in place. Eli came back on nights because the roster still had his name on it, because leaving wouldn't change what the world depended on, because someone still had to push a mop across the lip of a wound and pretend it was just a flaw. The bays sounded different now. There was a constant undertone threaded through everything, a restrained vibration you stopped noticing only when you wanted to believe. Some nights, in the oldest sections, Eli still saw faint condensation that didn't match the air, quicker than before, softer, like a fingertip testing glass instead of a palm pressing. Sometimes his radio hissed in a way that made his throat tighten. He never answered. On his last bay of the shift, C12, because routines didn't care about trauma, Eli finished cleaning and stood for a moment with the cloth in his hand. The platform sat matte and still, the new hardware wrapped around it like restraint. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. Eli stared a beat too long, then did what had become habit and superstition both. He shut off the bay lights. Darkness folded over the platform. Emergency strips glowed faint. The hum remained, steady as a held breath. Eli stood in the dark, listening, and felt the quiet become heavy with awareness. He shut off the bay lights, and in the dark, the stabilizer's hum didn't stop. It just got easier to hear. Thanks for watching Echo Forge. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe so the next tale finds you. Share this with someone who loves dark fantasy or twisted sci-fi, and I'll see you in the next world.